Picture this: a map of the Atlantic Ocean stretching from the coast of West Africa all the way to the Caribbean. Now trace a line from the port of Nassau in the Bahamas, down through the Windward Passage between Cuba and Hispaniola, past the coast of Venezuela, and across to the shores of Madagascar on the other side of the world. This was the hunting ground. Thousands of miles of open water where merchant ships carried gold, silver, silk, sugar, and enslaved people between empires. And for a brief, violent, and surprisingly organized period of history, a single flag controlled all of it. Not a nation's flag, not a military banner, a white skull over two crossed bones on a field of black, the Jolly Roger. Between 1690 and 1730, this flag and its many variations terrorized the most powerful navies on Earth. It forced merchant captains to surrender without a single shot fired. It made the British Crown, the Spanish Empire, and the French Navy spend fortunes trying to hunt down the men who flew it. But here is the part that most people get wrong. The Jolly Roger was never just a scary picture on a piece of cloth. It was a weapon, a calculated psychological instrument of war designed to communicate a very specific message to anyone who saw it on the horizon. And that message? Surrender now, and you live. Fight back, and every single person on your ship dies. The skull and crossbones wasn't random. The hourglasses, the bleeding hearts, the skeletons, the swords. Every element on every pirate flag meant something. And once you understand what those symbols actually communicated, you'll never look at the Jolly Roger the same way again. To understand how a piece of fabric became the most feared symbol in maritime history, we need to go back to a time before pirates even had their own flags. Back to a world where the line between pirate and patriot was so thin that even kings couldn't tell the difference. Long before the skull and crossbones became the universal symbol of piracy, flags at sea meant something very different. They were identifiers. Every ship that sailed flew a flag to announce who it was, where it came from, and whether it was friend or enemy. Naval vessels flew their nation's colors. Merchant ships flew the flag of their home port or trading company. And this system worked, more or less, for centuries. You could see a ship on the horizon, check its flag, and make a reasonable decision about whether to approach or run. But here is where things got complicated. In the 1500s and 1600s, European monarchs discovered a loophole in warfare. Instead of building massive navies to fight their enemies, they could hire private ship captains to do the fighting for them. These were the privateers, men like Sir Francis Drake, who sailed under the English flag but operated like a pirate in every way that mattered. Privateers carried documents called letters of marque. These were essentially government-issued licenses to rob enemy ships. If England was at war with Spain, an English privateer could attack any Spanish vessel, steal its cargo, and split the profits with the crown. All perfectly legal, at least on paper. The problem was that privateers quickly figured out that flags were tools of deception. A privateer could fly a friendly flag to get close to a target, then raise his true colors at the last moment before attacking. This was called flying false colors, and it was so common that no one trusted flags anymore. Imagine being a merchant captain in the Caribbean in 1650. You see a ship approaching with a French flag. Are they French? Maybe. Are they English privateers pretending to be French? Possibly. Are they outright pirates who stole the flag from a ship they captured last week? Also possible. The entire system of identification at sea had collapsed, and into that chaos stepped the pirates of the Golden Age, who realized something that no one else had figured out yet. If nobody trusts flags anyway, why not create a flag that tells the truth? The name Jolly Roger itself is one of the great mysteries of pirate history. Nobody knows for certain where it came from, and historians have been arguing about it for 300 years. The most popular theory traces it to the French phrase Joli Rouge, meaning pretty red. This makes more sense than it sounds. Before the black flag became standard, many pirates actually flew red flags. A red flag at sea had a very specific meaning in naval tradition. It meant no quarter, no mercy, fight to the death. If you saw a red flag approaching, it meant the attacking ship had no intention of taking prisoners. The French privateers who operated out of the Caribbean were among the first to use red flags consistently, and Jolly Rouge, spoken with a heavy English sailor's accent, could easily become Jolly Roger over time. Many historians consider it the most likely origin. But there are other theories. Some point to the term Old Roger, which was English slang for the devil. Others connect it to Ali Raja, the title used by Muslim pirates off the Malabar coast of India. English sailors may have adapted Ali Raja into Jolly Roger over time. Whatever the origin, by the early 1700s, the term was widely understood among sailors to mean a pirate flag. And the transition from red to black was already underway. The shift happened because pirates realized that a red flag was counterproductive to their actual business model. Think about it. If you fly a red flag, you are telling your target that you plan to kill everyone no matter what. So what does the merchant crew do? They fight back with everything they have because they have nothing to lose. That is bad for business. Pirates did not want to fight. Every battle risked damage to their ship, injuries to their crew, and destruction of the very cargo they were trying to steal. The ideal pirate attack was one where no shots were fired at all, so they needed a flag that said something different. Not, "We will kill you no matter what," but rather, "We will kill you if you resist." Surrender peacefully, hand over your cargo, and you go home alive. The black flag was born out of this logic. Black meant death, but it was a conditional death, a negotiable death. And that distinction was the genius of the Jolly Roger. Now here is where the Jolly Roger gets genuinely fascinating. Because pirates did not all fly the same flag. The skull and crossbones that we associate with piracy today was just one variation. In reality, there were dozens of different designs, and each one communicated something specific about the pirate who flew it. The skull was universal. It meant death. But the objects placed alongside the skull told you what kind of death and under what conditions. Crossed bones beneath the skull was the most common arrangement. This was the classic Jolly Roger, and it carried the simplest message. We are pirates. We deal in death. Surrender your cargo. But then there was the hourglass. Several famous pirate flags included an hourglass alongside the skull, and this added an urgent dimension to the threat. The hourglass meant your time is running out. It was a countdown. Every second you spend debating whether to fight or surrender is a second closer to your death. Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach, flew one of the most elaborate flags in pirate history. His flag showed a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and a spear in the other, pointing the spear at a bleeding heart. Every element was deliberate. The skeleton represented death itself. The hourglass said, "Your time is up." The spear showed violent intent. And the bleeding heart? That was the most chilling part. It meant, we will pierce your heart, not your ship, not your cargo. You, personally. Blackbeard understood something fundamental about psychological warfare. The more specific the threat, the more terrifying it becomes. A vague promise of violence is scary. A detailed promise of exactly how you will die is paralyzing. Other pirates took different approaches. Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, flew multiple flags depending on his mood and his target. One of his flags showed himself standing on two skulls, labeled ABH and AMH. These stood for a Barbadian's head and a Martinican's head. Roberts had personal grudges against the governors of Barbados and Martinique, and he wanted everyone to know it. His flag was not just a threat, it was a public declaration of vengeance against specific enemies. Calico Jack Rackham, famous as much for his association with the female pirates Anne Bonny and Mary Red as for his own exploits, flew a flag with a skull above two crossed swords instead of crossed bones. The swords were a subtle but important change. Bones suggest the aftermath of death, something already over. Swords suggest the act of killing, something about to happen right now. Edward Lowe, one of the cruelest pirates in recorded history, flew a red skeleton on a black background. Not a skull. A full skeleton, colored red, suggesting a body that had been skinned alive or drenched in blood. Lowe's reputation for extreme violence preceded him, and his flag confirmed what every sailor already feared. This was not a man interested in negotiation. The variety of pirate flags was not random creativity, it was branding. Each flag was a pirate captain's personal signature, carefully designed to communicate his specific reputation. And in an era before mass media, before newspapers reached every port, this flag was how a pirate built and maintained his brand of terror across thousands of miles of ocean. Most people do not realize that pirates typically carried two flags, not one. The black flag and the red flag served completely different purposes, and understanding the relationship between them reveals just how sophisticated pirate psychology really was. The black flag was raised first. Always, when a pirate ship spotted a potential target, up went the Jolly Roger. And the message was clear. We are pirates. We intend to take your cargo. But if you cooperate, if you strike your colors and heave to, we will take what we want and let you live. This was the negotiation flag, the opening offer. But if the target refused to surrender, if the merchant captain decided to run or fight, the pirate crew would lower the black flag and raise a red one. The red flag changed everything. Red meant no quarter, no mercy, no negotiation. The window for peaceful surrender had closed. From this point forward, every person on the target ship would be killed, regardless of whether they later tried to surrender. This two-flag system was devastatingly effective because it created a time pressure that merchant crews could not ignore. The moment you saw the black flag, you had a decision to make, and you had to make it fast. Wait too long, and the red flag goes up, and your chance to survive disappears. Psychologically, this exploited something called loss aversion. Humans fear losing something they already have more than they value gaining something new. The merchant crew already had their lives. The black flag said, you can keep your lives if you cooperate. The red flag said, you just lost the thing you valued most. And here is the brutal logic that made it work. Pirates had to follow through on the red flag's promise. Every single time. If word got around that a pirate crew raised the red flag but then showed mercy, the entire system fell apart. The threat only worked if it was credible. So when the red flag went up, the killing was real. This created a horrifying incentive structure for merchant crews. You might hate pirates, you might want to fight. But you knew with absolute certainty that if you saw that red flag, every person you cared about on your ship was going to die. And so most crews surrendered at the black flag, which is exactly what the pirates wanted. Some historians estimate that as many as 80% of pirate attacks during the Golden Age ended without significant violence. Not because pirates were gentle, but because their flag system made violence unnecessary. The Jolly Roger did not just represent fear, it manufactured compliance. The period between roughly 1690 and 1730 is known as the Golden Age of Piracy. And during this window of about 40 years, the Jolly Roger went from a regional nuisance to an international crisis. To understand why piracy exploded during this period, you need to understand what was happening in the world. The War of the Spanish Succession had just ended in 1714, and thousands of experienced sailors and privateers were suddenly out of work. These were men who knew how to fight at sea, who knew the shipping lanes, who knew which routes carried the most valuable cargo. And now their governments told them to go home and find honest work. Most of them did not take that advice well. Nassau in the Bahamas became the unofficial capital of piracy. At its peak, Nassau was home to somewhere between 501,000 pirates. They had effectively taken over the island, driving out the British governor and establishing what some historians call a pirate republic. Ships came and went freely. Stolen goods were bought and sold openly. And the Jolly Roger flew from the masts of ships anchored in the harbor like it was the national flag. From Nassau, pirate captains fanned out across the Atlantic. They hit the shipping lanes between the American colonies and England. They raided the Spanish treasure fleets coming up from South America. They crossed to the coast of West Africa, where they intercepted slave ships, sometimes freeing the enslaved people, sometimes incorporating them into their crews and sometimes doing far worse. A smaller but equally dangerous group operated in the Indian Ocean, particularly around Madagascar and the coast of India. These pirates targeted the incredibly wealthy trade routes between India, the Middle East, and Europe. A single capture from an Indian merchant vessel could yield more treasure than a year of raiding in the Caribbean. The Jolly Roger unified all of these scattered operations under a single visual identity. A pirate flying the skull-and-crossbones off the coast of Newfoundland communicated the same message as a pirate flying it near the Strait of Malacca. The flag transcended language, nationality, and geography, and the colonial powers were terrified. The British Admiralty estimated that piracy was costing merchants millions of pounds per year. Insurance rates for Atlantic shipping skyrocketed. Some trade routes became so dangerous that merchant ships refused to sail without naval escort. The response was predictable. The Crown declared war on piracy. They sent warships. They offered pardons to pirates who surrendered. They captured, tried, and hanged pirates in public spectacles designed to discourage others. And they specifically targeted the flag. Colonial courts treated the Jolly Roger as evidence of piracy. If you were captured on a ship flying a pirate flag, the flag itself was used against you at trial. Flying the Jolly Roger was not just a symbol, it was a confession. Let us talk about some of the specific pirates whose flags became legendary. Henry Every, sometimes spelled Avery, is often called the most successful pirate in history. In 1695, he captured the Mughal ship Ganges Sawai in the Indian Ocean, seizing treasure worth somewhere between 325,000 and 600,000 pounds, an almost incomprehensible fortune at the time. His flag showed a skull in profile wearing a bandana positioned above two crossed bones. It was one of the earliest documented examples of the classic Jolly Roger design. But Every's real contribution to pirate mythology was his disappearance. After the capture, he vanished completely. The British government launched one of the largest manhunts in history. They never found him. To this day, no one knows what happened to Henry Every. The mystery only added to the power of his flag, which became a symbol not just of piracy, but of getting away with it. Bartholomew Roberts is statistically the most successful pirate of the Golden Age, capturing over 400 ships during his career. Roberts did not drink alcohol. He dressed in expensive clothing. He enforced strict discipline on his ships, including written articles that some historians consider an early form of democratic constitution. His most famous flag, showing him standing on two skulls, was a direct message to the governors who had wronged him. Roberts was not hiding from authority. He was mocking it. Edward Teach Blackbeard may be the most famous pirate in history, but his career was surprisingly short. He was active for only about 2 years before being killed in a battle with the Royal Navy in 1718. Yet his impact on pirate mythology is outsized, and his flag is a big reason why. Blackbeard cultivated his image with obsessive care. He wove slow-burning fuses into his enormous beard during battle, so that smoke wreathed his face and made him look demonic. His flag, with its skeleton and bleeding heart, was part of the same strategy. Every element of Blackbeard's public persona was designed to make people afraid. And it worked. Many of his targets surrendered without a fight, simply because they recognized the flag and the smoke and the legend. Here is something that most documentaries about pirates miss entirely. The Jolly Roger was not just a weapon aimed outward at enemies. It was also a symbol of the social order within pirate ships. When a crew voted to go on the account, the euphemism for turning pirate, raising the Jolly Roger, was the final irreversible step. It was a collective declaration. Every man on the ship was now an outlaw. Every man was equally guilty under the law. And that equality was not just a side effect, it was the foundation of pirate society. Pirate ships were among the most democratic institutions in the Western world during the early 1700s. Captains were elected by crew vote. They could be removed by crew vote. Major decisions, including where to sail, which ships to attack, and how to divide plunder, were made collectively. Most pirate crews operated under written articles, essentially constitutions that every crew member signed or marked before the voyage began. These articles specified how loot would be divided, what compensation a man would receive if he lost a limb in battle, and what punishments would follow violations. The Jolly Roger flew above all of this. It was the flag of the community, not the captain. When Bartholomew Roberts was killed in battle, his crew continued fighting under his flag because the flag belonged to them all. On a Royal Navy ship, the flag represented the crown. The captain served at the king's pleasure. The hierarchy was rigid, and the flag reinforced that hierarchy. On a pirate ship, the flag represented the crew's collective decision to live outside the law. It was, in a strange and somewhat ironic way, a democratic symbol. The skull grinned at everyone equally, captain and cabin boy alike. The Golden Age of Piracy did not fade quietly. It was crushed deliberately and methodically by the combined efforts of the British, French, and Spanish empires. The campaign began in earnest around 1718 when King George I issued the Act of Grace, a royal pardon offered to any pirate who surrendered before a specified deadline. Hundreds of pirates accepted. The strategy was clever. By offering amnesty, the Crown reduced the number of pirates at sea while also gathering intelligence about those who refused to surrender. For the pirates who rejected the pardon, the response was military. Woodes Rogers, the new governor of the Bahamas, arrived in Nassau with a small fleet and effectively dismantled the pirate republic, offering pardons to those who surrendered and hanging those who did not. Piracy trials were held across the colonies, designed as public spectacles. Pirates were hanged at the waterline, and their bodies were often left in iron cages called gibbets, displayed at harbor entrances as warnings to passing sailors. The message was unmistakable. This is what happens when you fly the Jolly Roger. By the mid-1730s, the Golden Age was effectively over. The great pirate captains were dead or retired. The shipping lanes were patrolled. Nassau was under Crown control. The Jolly Roger, as a living flag flown by operating pirates, had been systematically eliminated. But the flag itself refused to die. Something strange happened after the Golden Age ended. The Jolly Roger, stripped of its original context, began to take on new meanings that had almost nothing to do with actual piracy. The first transformation was literary. In 1724, a book called A General History of the Pirates was published under the name Captain Charles Johnson. This book romanticized pirate life, turning brutal criminals into adventurous anti-heroes. It described pirate flags in vivid detail, cementing the skull and crossbones as the iconic pirate symbol in the public imagination. Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, published in 1883, completed the transformation. Long John Silver, Captain Flint, and the quest for buried treasure became the template for every pirate story that followed. The Jolly Roger went from a symbol of genuine terror to a symbol of swashbuckling fun. But the flag also found its way into legitimate military use, which is one of history's great ironies. The British Royal Navy, the very force that had spent decades destroying pirate fleets, began adopting the Jolly Roger as an unofficial submarine tradition in the early 20th century. The story goes that a British admiral once dismissed submarines as underhand, unfair, and damned un-English, comparing submarine warfare to piracy. When British submarines began sinking enemy ships in World War I, their crews embraced the insult, flying the Jolly Roger upon returning to port as a mark of pride. The tradition continued through World War II. British submarines flew modified Jolly Rogers with symbols indicating their kills, bars for ships torpedoed, daggers for special operations, stars for gun actions. Several other navies adopted similar traditions. The skull and crossbones, once the mark of an outlaw, had become a badge of honor for state-sponsored warriors. Today, the Jolly Roger exists in more forms and contexts than its original creators could have imagined. In popular culture, it is everywhere. Pirate flags hang in college dorm rooms and beach bars. They appear on clothing, tattoos, bumper stickers, and corporate logos. It appears in children's cartoons and on birthday party decorations. The flag that once made grown men surrender their ships is now printed on infant onesies. But the Jolly Roger has also maintained some of its original edge. Anarchist movements have adopted the flag as a symbol of resistance to authority. Hackers and internet activists have embraced the skull and crossbones as a symbol of digital piracy and free information. The connection between 18th century pirates and 21st century hackers is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Both groups operate outside established legal frameworks. Both groups threaten the economic interests of powerful institutions. And both groups use their symbols to build identity and community among people who see themselves as outsiders. The skull and crossbones has also remained a universal warning symbol. The poison label on chemical containers, the danger signs on electrical equipment, the warning markers on minefields, all of them trace their visual language back to the same simple idea that pirates understood 300 years ago. A skull means death. Everyone knows that. No translation required. The flag remains a cultural touchstone because it taps into something primal. It represents the fantasy of total freedom, of answering to no one, of taking what you want, and living by your own rules. Never mind that real piracy was brutal, short-lived, and usually ended with a noose. The symbol has transcended its reality. So what does the Jolly Roger really mean? It means that 300 years ago, a group of desperate, brilliant, ruthless men figured out something that modern psychologists and marketing experts would spend centuries trying to articulate. The right symbol, deployed at the right moment, can be more powerful than any weapon. The skull did not just scare people, it communicated an entire negotiation in a single image. Surrender or die. Choose quickly. We are not bluffing. It was branding before branding existed. It was psychological warfare before anyone called it that. It was a flag that turned a ragged crew on a stolen ship into the most feared force on the ocean. And the fact that we are still talking about it, still wearing it, still flying it, 3 centuries after the last Golden Age pirate swung from a gibbet tells you everything you need to know about its power. The Jolly Roger was never just a flag, it was the most successful marketing campaign in human history. If you found this deep dive fascinating, there is a video on screen right now about the real lives behind these pirate legends. Click it. And if you made it this far, you are clearly not a casual viewer. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next.